70% of major changes in businesses fail. And that's because of a bad management in human resources. But today, our team from True North Consulting, composed of Anis, Constance, Stanley, and myself, Guillaume, are here to ensure that you don't fall into that 70% and that you grow into that governance restructure. So, you gave us the mandate today to restructure your governance in the long run while ensuring your growth. And to do so, we had to analyze many key elements which led us to our strategy today, the Gloom Gen. The Gloom Gen is a strategy that will restructure your governance in the long run, but that will also ensure growth while targeting a new segment in the market. And all of this will lead you to positive impacts in the end.
So first we decided to look at your biggest strategic objectives in the next upcoming years, and we compared them to changes in the dry flower industry in order to identify changes that you have to keep in mind in order to build your new governance structure. So first, one of your strategic objectives was to reconsider your product mix. Indeed, we're seeing a big shift in consumer preferences with more minimalist and neutral designs. However, we see that almost half of European companies are still not completely aligned with this new shift and are still offering outdated designs. Also, we see that dry flowers aren't the only product that interests consumers. We see a rise in artificial plants as well. What this all means for you is that in the upcoming years, you're surely going to expand your product mix, which means that you need to do a cross-functional teams, which means your marketing teams have to work with a research and development teams so that you can develop products that align with those trends. Your second objective was to expand your cultivation and automation processes. And we see indeed that we have a more and more aging population in Hungary, meaning that you have to start developing your automation processes. But we also see significant drought periods in Hungary, which means you need to develop certain cultivation processes that are going to fight these droughts. And what that means for you in terms of your governance structure is that you need leaders that understand those new agri-tech and sustainable cultivation methods so that you can fight those challenges. Your third objective was your boosting brand and market presence. We see that there is a big rise in the global market in terms of dry flowers, but especially in Europe. What that means for you is that in the next years, you're very surely going to expand, whether it's by exports or subsidiaries, in your neighboring countries, notably Austria and Slovakia. But the problem is we have 85% of Central European SMEs that struggle with online visibility because their websites are not aligned with multinational languages. What that means is that you need leaders that not only understand other markets, but you need to have annual audits to verify your brand KPIs, but also your international marketing strategies to make sure that they're always aligned with your interests. And your final objective was to enhance your quality control in the upcoming years. We see more and more pressure, not only from the consumers, but from the European Commission to have certified eco products and more quality products. What that means for you is that you need to establish a quality control subcommittee so that you can verify your product's quality from every stage of its life cycle.
But we also want to check at the risk that your company might face in the next year with this transition. That's why we did 3 study cases, one in France, one in Italy, but the most important one, Linamar, here in Hungary. And we identified 5 main challenges. First, a loss of brand identity, but also an unclear communication, and finally, a lack of independency in the decision making. So, what do you need to do to avoid those changes? There's 3 strategies. First, write a cooperation book. Also, communicate efficiently with all of your employees. And finally, have external decision making included in your company. So, that's why at True North Consulting, we are proud to present to you today the Bloom Gen. That's gonna be a strategy in 2 pillars. First, a new governance for your company, but also a strategy to make you grow organically.
So now what we all want to know is who will take the head of your company. So we are proposing today to have the 2 oldest brothers, you, Balint and Christophe, to take the head of your company. So we have decided to split the task that you wanted to keep in the family, because we saw that your company will continue to grow, so separating the task will help you be more precise and efficient for the growth. Also, we will have 3 vacant positions. 2 of them will be filled by the next generation, Veronica and Akos, but there will still be 1 remaining that can be filled by a natural manager that can develop its competencies to one day take an executive role. Finally, we are proposing today to have a special international team. This will reduce your workload and specialize the company into the international expansion so you can be very expert in this field. Finally, We know that managing a company by being broader, you can sometimes face disagreements or challenges. This is why we are proposing to have a third part. The third part would be an advisory board. The advisory board will have members of the family, of course, but also external members that will offer an objective point of view and that can tell you advices and have an objective part. Finally, for the next generation that will succeed in the company, we are offering a path where they can discover other activities of the company to know where they want to fit in, how the things are happening inside the company, but mostly what is the reality of the employees who will work for them. Finally, a change of successions is not just a change for the successor. It's also a change for the 57 other employees. That's why we are offering today to manage this change by at the same time have a transparent communication to avoid all of the rumors that can be happening between the employees. You can rely on your employees that are the most enthusiastic about this change to convince their colleagues. Finally, you have to ask regularly for feedback to know how this change is happening for them.
But how to grow while restructuring your governance? Well, the first thing we saw is that you are in an industry that is already growing at a CAGR of 6.5%, which means that your company will grow organically. But to support that, what we saw is that it will be necessary to employ as much as 20 employees during the next 8 years, which means that your payroll is going to get heavier. And to do so, we planned a recruitment campaign, but what we saw, which is mandatory to notice here, is that your payroll could represent 33% by 2033 if we only grow organically, which means that you have to find a new streamline of revenues so you can support this growth and keep your payroll on revenue as low as 26%.
And this new revenue streamline, is gonna be by two products. First, a DIY kit. That's gonna include three main things. First, 3 to 5 different type of dried flowers. Also, every tool that you need to create those unique floral objects. And finally, a guide to help your consumer. When I'm talking about consumer, it's gonna be maybe like the florist boutique or anything else like corporate events. The second project now is some DIY workshop. Workshops are gonna include some material kit to create also the object, a step-by-step guidance for the consumers, and finally some thematic project and atmosphere to create a unique experience for your customer, which will bring a payroll revenue about 26.5%, which is closer to your company standards.
So now this is your whole complete succession plan that we can see a bit later if you want, but what is the most interesting is how you can implement it. So first of all, you need to have a clear communication all along the way with all of your employees, define precisely the role and task for every of your employees, and during the third year you can begin to develop your new activities to keep your company growing.
To ensure that everything goes well, we also plan some KPIs for you to analyze during that change so you can be sure that your employees and the company is still going well and that the change is managed well. So we can see the 3 KPIs on my right here, and we talked about growth too. Well, we plan a growth of 0.61% in your share market in the European Union, which means about 1 million forints by 2033 additional revenues. So it's about 2 times what you actually do today. So with our strategy, you can be really more efficient with your governance and your structure, but also keep growing in the future while targeting a new streamline of revenue.
So today we present to you a lot of things, but what we want you to keep in mind is in order to reconstruct your governance structure and in order to build your succession plan, you need to keep in mind and align this structure and plan with your strategic objectives in the upcoming years, not only to keep growing, but also to keep the tradition alive for your company. Thank you for listening to us, and we're ready to answer any of your questions.